James Hawkinson, congratulations on receiving your very first Emmy nomination for your work on The Man in the High Castle. How did it feel getting the news you'd been nominated?
It's very exciting. I'm thrilled, of course.
hmm Well, you had gotten an ASC nomination for this last year, so did you anticipate that you might be in the running or at all, or?
Um, well, I definitely know that the show is a high-profile show, and it's got a lot of attention and recognition for my work, and for a lot of people that worked on the show. But of course, it was a surprise because there were so many. I think there was a record amount of entries this year, so it was a surprise.
Yeah, something like close to 400 shows, I think, were in the running. So congratulations for making the cut. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this show.
I was doing a series called Hannibal that was aired on NBC, and on season 2 we had a guest director by the name of David Simpkin who ended up doing the pilot for this show. So he approached me about collaborating with him on this pilot, and I was thrilled. Of course, I'm a Philip K. Dick fan and a Ridley Scott fan, and of course, I love Blade Runner, and so it was an exciting project from the start.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're nominated for your work on the pilot, and of course, in a pilot, you're supposed to establish the mood and tone of the show and what the overall look is going to be. So, what were your initial ideas for what that look was?
Well, we wanted a somewhat of a retro-futuristic look for this show, and what I mean by that is retro in terms of we wanted it to have a vintage look, a look of kind of how photography and film looked in the early 60s, and futuristic in that there's impossible technology that takes place within the show. But basically, we wanted a very nostalgic, again, early 60s type of palette.
Mm-hmm. And how did you go about achieving that through color and framing and light?
Well, rather than do it photochemically, with real film stocks and using stocks that they had of the period, we did it all digitally, basically. So it's really comes down to the grading of it to give it that type of look, but also with our choice of lenses and filtrations and things like that, just in capturing it in the first place, those were considerations.
Mm-hmm. And then in working with the other department heads, I mean, you're one of 4 total nominations that the show received. It's also up for production design and visual effects, and I mean that plays a great deal in how you go about doing your work. Can you talk about collaborating with the other department heads on this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of discussions with Drew, our production designer, and with Audrey, our costume designer, about the kind of color palettes that we wanted to have in front of the camera. And so there was a lot of discussion about each specific color. And again, what would give this kind of, vintage look to it. There are certain colors that feel more nostalgic than others.
Mm-hmm. So you've worked on a lot of really high-end projects, Hannibal being one of them, and of course this one as well. The work in television is becoming more and more cinematic every day. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's a revolution that's happening. I don't know if it's a generational thing or what it is, but certainly there's a lot of great uh, craftspeople, out there doing this stuff, and I'm pleased to be part of that revolution. Um, I've always tried to make my shows look different, and from the comedies I did to this one, and anyway, it's gratifying to be part of this movement.
Hmm. And I mean, there is a lot of crossover with TV people going to do movies and movie people going to do TV. I mean, the lines just sort of blur a lot. This project in particular is something that 20 years ago or so would be a film. But instead, you have season after season that you can develop this long form story. How did your work develop over the course of shooting this season? You shot a lot of episodes for this.
Yeah. What's funny, Ridley Scott originally was going to do this
Mm.
as a film, and I had heard that he brought Philip K. Dick down to show him the opening of Blade Runner, those magnificent first shots, uh, showing the cityscape of Los Angeles. Um, it was actually those shots were actually done by a guy named Dave Stewart. I used to light for him back when I was working in visual effects. But anyway, so the project developed. I think it had many incarnations. Is that the word?
Yeah.
um, and then became a television series. So I feel like when you go to series with things, things can kind of ebb and flow a little bit, and there are certain things that aesthetically we kind of adhere to on the show, and one of those is that San Francisco tends to look a little warmer, and New York looks a little colder. And the way that happened was actually a happy accident when I did the pilot. When I did that very large establishing shot of San Francisco at sunset, the light had a very warm and brassy quality to it. I found out later that this was due to forest fires in Siberia,
Mm.
and that the sun was going through that atmosphere and just giving a very warm palette to it. Now, that doesn't mean that in going to series, every shot of San Francisco will necessarily be warmer. But again, these kind of aesthetics can sort of ebb and flow as you move along.
In working with David Simmel on the pilot, what did he give you? You two had worked together already on Hannibal. So what is that collaboration like between the two of you? And then bringing in the showrunner to kind of guide the way as well.
Well, we had a working relationship, having worked together before, and so there's a familiarity there. But certainly this was a new project, and we really started from scratch, from ground zero to start building up how we were going to approach this one, because certainly it's a different show than Hannibal, the one we had worked on before. So it's really again, we started at ground zero, just uh, with the other department heads, etc. World building, they call it.
Mhm. Yeah, you guys really do, all of you, create this world that it's a tough thing to do because it has to be a world that's recognizable, but also uh, very much different. An alternative history of our country. You know.
Yeah, again, it's sort of we really wanted the effect of you're looking at old family photographs from the early '60s and old Kodachrome photographs from something, but there's a rocket ship flying through the background, or just something inexplicable, technology-wise. Philip K. Dick was very interested in false worlds, false people, uh, false. He was, I think, he was the ultimate skeptic when it came to reality, and so we kind of wanted to play with that, again, bringing something that is very familiar, nostalgic, yet completely foreign and strange.
Mm-hmm. So then what for you would be an individual shot from this pilot that you would point to and say, that's an example of the best that I was able to achieve, either because it looked really good or it conveyed a certain amount of information very well? What would be a shot that you would point to and say, I really hit it out of the park with that one?
Well, I think both of the establishing shots of San Francisco and New York City are worth mention. And the beginning of our show, we don't really know what's going on. We're in a movie theater. Our protagonist is passed a piece of paper with an address, the name of a trucking company on it, and then he begins this journey. And it's a little bit strange in the movie theater. There's a couple of small hints. There might be a flag with a swastika on it, or some little hint. And as he walks through the lobby, there's kind of suspicious looking people looking over their shoulders. But when he exits that movie theater and he's walking through Times Square on his way to the subway, that's when we really go big and open up what this world is that we're creating here. And as soon as I think we go through a newspaper stand that has like Adolf Hitler as Time Magazine's Man of the Year on the cover, and that's a very subtle thing. And then as you arrive into the center of Times Square, you see this massive neon swastika and all these propaganda posters, industries surge and all this kind of stuff. So that shot definitely comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. It really is striking. What was it that got you into doing this? I mean, what was it that had you always wanted to be a cinematographer, or was it something that just developed from a love of movies?
That's a great question, and one that not a lot of people ask. It's a combination of things. My parents were huge movie fans, and I grew up watching films and television shows, etc. But when I was a teenager, I was more into music, and I played piano and different keyboards and so forth. And I thought about becoming a composer for films. And
Really? Wow.
by the time I got to college, I started experimenting with film just to kind of cut to my own music, and completely fell in love with the craft.
Mm-hmm. Well, James, once again, congratulations on your work, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, Zach.
Welcome. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.